So I think what we're going to do is see if anybody wanted to ask any questions. And I know it's kind of scary to be the first one to raise your hand, but I, in fact, answered the first one, which is, what kind of writer are you? Another thing that I can share about my writing is that I recently started publishing essays for the Huffington Post, and those essays can be seen on my website, and they're a whole bunch of different topics, so it's a whole different world than the art I bring to fiction, and so they're about life, and there's a couple of little political ones, and then there's my love of the game of baseball I've written about, so I wanted to share that also. And the fact that I am a painter and that I have a gallery here in beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida, that I'm very proud of, and it's above the Ale and the Witch if anybody wants to come and take a look. So let's see if anybody's interested in asking. We'll do a couple of questions. Yes?
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 sons, all teenagers, and your readings from the first book were incredibly right on and very poignant. So my question is, with regard to what you published regarding a father's viewpoint about sons, have you thought of perhaps putting it in a parent magazine or perhaps in a newspaper? Because I don't think there's that much out there for fathers to identify with, particularly when it comes to raising sons and really being a father to their sons.
Well, the one thing I'll say about that is tomorrow Tampa Bay Parenting is coming to our house to take pictures. And they sent me a questionnaire in which I wrote honestly about, they're saying what's been hard, what's been easy, what's the reward. So I did that this week. So the notion of putting some of this into a parenting magazine, say that again?
It's going to be the Father's Day issue.
The Father's Day issue of Tampa Bay Parenting magazine. So that should be fun. And what I wrote were my true feelings about being a parent. I see what you're saying. Nobody wants, when you're selling a fiction, it's hard to get pieces of it placed in certain places. But as I was writing those answers to those questions this week, I was happy that I was going to be able to share my take on it, that was going to be out there. Because it's not necessarily everybody's take on it or every dad's take on it. And our culture is set up so that dads and moms are at work. So as you know, it's a juggling act of time. You have to have your time, you have to be a breadwinner, and you have to show them that they are as important as they are. So, anybody else? Hi.
To me, writing and some of the really beautiful contemporary art that you do seem to be two totally different creative veins. Do they tie together for you? How do those two things work?
The abstract, I paint abstractly and in acrylic and oil, and it began for me because I was sitting at the table with my young daughter and we were drawing. We was like, oh, what are we going to do? Let's draw. So I started to just do designs, and I guess I started to like what I saw, and then ended up putting it on canvas, and then they became enormous and interesting to other people, and so it sort of snowballed from there. The fact that I am not using language at all, so black word on a white page is all you're working with. Screenplay is a blueprint for when you arrive on the set, actors, crew members. We're talking about just that black word. So when it came to an art form in which I could express myself with 0 words, in fact, when one assesses the painting and says, what am I supposed to feel or what is it? Language isn't necessarily the perfect way to go. It's more of a feeling. It's more of how the piece, what it means to you, and how it might fit with your life in your home. So I found a great relief in not needing language after so much language is needed in the process of this business, and that's the fact that I can leave this and go there is really wonderful for me. And I've sort of been learning this in the last bunch of years because that's been growing in me. So it's an interesting dichotomy in that my work is so solitary and so surrounded in sentences and transitions from paragraph to next, and which chapter is going to work best for the book, if it's here or if it's way here. And then I have a blank canvas, and at one point in my day, I fire paint at it. Or it's actually planned, but there's throwing and seeing the result of something just landing on a canvas. So both canvases, but so I feel lucky that that's opened up for me. Yes.
Two-part. How does your location where you're writing from, or that you're creating, St. Pete, play a character in your writings? And how do you find time to work, being a dad? And what's your writing process?
So the first question, you say about St. Pete and the character. Tell me that one. Oh, about this character.
Is it set in St. Pete, and how?
Yeah.
Play?
So we were in California for 18 years, and we came here. My wife took a job at the Home Shopping Network, and it was about us sort of landing in this oasis of a town that no one knows about St. Petersburg outside of St. Petersburg, it seems to me. There's a what do you mean West Coast, Florida? You know, my grandma's no, your grandma's over there. So I wanted to write about this family that didn't know this world, who got plopped down in this world, and sort of playing with the differences. And there are a lot of differences, and that's sort of how it was born. And I remember the first days I was writing it, just sitting, and it's funny, the Daddy Diaries, I was sort of saying to myself, just write like a diary to get myself inspired about your being here. And the book begins with a conversation with a pelican. So, which was so, I'd never been that close to a pelican before I came to St. Petersburg. Now I was sitting alone with them, and they were sort of looking at me, and then I started to think, I'm sort of like them. I'm alone in this town, and my kids are off. But anyway, and then the next question was about process.
Well, yeah. What is do you write in the morning? How do you fit it in?
Right, with the 9 to 5 is my favorite. I know writers who are like, I start at 1 a.m. No kids, But I got into the routine with kids, and I say that because. I wrote this 6 months after my son was born, and I think what it was a book about a father and a son, and I was feeling empowered. I was standing anew as I had a baby and a family, and I was empowered to go do it. And that at that time I was a stay-at-home dad, and then we got a nanny, and then so I had my limited time, and I would walk in San Francisco up the street to this library and just bury myself there. And I remember those days, and it became very much routine. I think my brain fires most in the morning, and then it just sort of dwindles out. I don't know if everybody's like that, but I was always appreciative that they gave those standardized tests first thing in the morning, because so I get up and I actually don't eat much, and just try to get writing. Many years of writing and being inspired by other writers who say, this is how you get in the chair. A lot of people say, how do you motivate yourself? How do you do it to get in the chair? And I think the idea is to create characters that you want to visit when you wake up. So the end of that work day is important. How am I going to leave this? Because I want to be excited when I wake up to walk up the hill back to the library chair. No colleagues, no water cooler, kind of thing. So the reward has to be in what's being created and the notion that it's going to be worth it, even though there's zero promise on the other end. Anybody else? Yes.
With regard to the Daddy Diaries, has your son read it, and what is his?
Today, my son came into the room and said, I'm going to read The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green. Today. He's going to be 14 in June. So one would think, do the kids of authors pick those books up? And he's really ready for this book, and so I'm excited to see what he has to say. And his insight to my upbringing is going to grow. So we'll see what he has to say about that. But he has not read the Daddy Diaries, and I was wondering what I was going to do because I wasn't sure if he was going to come. But I think it's one of those things where, surprisingly enough, when this actually is out there, he'll be over it. You know, some of the stuff I'm reading now is earlier than him, and also he knows that he didn't go into a bathroom and see the word head on the bathroom wall, but my buddy's son did. Anybody else? Yes.
Whenever we read a book, we always see the finished product, but in the process, how much do you have to throw away? And at those moments, you have a great, dialogue or a scene, but it doesn't fit the book.
Right.
How do you deal with that, or
Yeah.
how much is
I think when I was
for another dialogue?
in the beginning, it was really hard. I think in the beginning there was something happening to me where I said, "Well, I've written it. How could you take it away now? It's here." That was really hurting me, because Hemingway said, he used to call it killing your babies, kind of harsh, but you write a paragraph and it's just working, it's clicking, it really defines what you're doing, to the extent that you're changing things around it. So it's still there, it hasn't been touched, but things are changing around it. This paragraph is doomed once you start doing all this changing. And W've seen that happen in my career to the extent now that I'm just like, go away. I don't need you anymore. You were here and now you're not here. And maybe I'll remember some little word from that paragraph, but that's all I'll use. It's changed completely, because the productivity of the day is going to come when you get rid of this thing that's in your way. You have to trust that you're going to fill that space with something just as good that's going to work. And I remember hearing about really struggling with this, and especially because you send it off to someone in New York City, in my publishing, that's sort of the mecca. Send it off and someone writes you back in 4 months and says, "I don't know," and you're thinking about it, where they might be reading it. And so the waiting is the hardest part. We're actually in waiting mode for the Daddy Diaries at this point. But it can be difficult to cut things that you love. And I think that's every art form. It works that way. So when you become seasoned, it's important to be able to say, well, there it goes, that great paragraph. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm one of the only daddies in the group.
Yeah.
I applaud you for writing the book, and the ladies are now learning that those conversations, those discussions aren't exactly easy. I have a couple of Gen Xers. I think yours are going to be Zs or millennials at best.
Yeah.
You have a daughter, you said.
Yes.
The book seems heavily male-oriented. When you think about the experiences with your daughter, I'm imagining they'd be much different.
Strangely, the Daddy Diaries is more about the daughter than the son. Yeah. I remember someone finishing and saying, "You didn't write about your son that much." And I was like, what about that great chapter? But it was way up in chapter 2. Yeah. So I wrote a lot. This is a book about the protagonist's relationship with 3 10-year-old girls. One's a niece, one's his daughter, and one is a best friend's daughter. And so he's got these girls, he's juggling his relationships with them to some degree, and I love that about the book. So it's interesting you brought that up, but I have one of each. So a lot of my inspiration to write the book, I think, comes from my relationship with my daughter. And I say that because I think she's an interesting person, the things that come out of her mouth. And I remember being very young and envisioning having a daughter. And I said she was going to be 11 years old, and we'd go to the movies. And after the movie, I'd be driving home, and she'd be asking me questions or telling me her thoughts. And I thought, oh, that'll be nirvana. The notion of having that dialogue would be great. And so she's 11 in August, and I have received so much more than I could have dreamed from this girl's thoughts. And so there's a lot in Daddy Diaries between the two, the dad and the daughter. Should we do one more? Anybody? Yes, sure.
Is there a concern that perhaps fathers don't want to read about parenting, and it might be more moms that are reading the book than dads?
That concern is always there because men read less than women. In big numbers. So when I was writing a book that felt sort of male, and it's from a male point of view, and it's honest. As you can see, I don't have much trouble writing anything down. So I don't know. I would love to reach a male audience, and but I think I think they all live in Seattle or something. It's like the most. I love it when guys come. Thank you. I see one. Where are you, Hemsey? There you are. Can't see you that well. Anybody have one more they thought? Oh, I got to ask. Yes.
I only have boys. Do I really need to know what a tuna melt is?
Okay, ready? No such thing. I was at the Ben Franklin. No such thing. But funny, right? Dirty Sanchez. You can look that. He said, ending his reading. I'm gonna. If you may already have these books, but if you don't, we have some for sale, and I can sign them to you or to a friend, or I could just sign it. Those are the people who want to sell it in some fantasy down the road. But I want to thank you very much for coming and for asking amazing questions. So thanks. Thank you.